Good evening. I am Trinace Riggs, Chair of the School Board of the City of Virginia Beach, Virginia, and I hereby call this meeting to order at 6 p.m. on this 14th day of March, 2023. Thank you to those who have joined us in person and online. Madam Clerk, will you please announce those school board members in attendance?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Present in the Holland Road Annex School Board Room is Chair Riggs, Vice Chair Weems, Ms. Anderson, Ms. Brown, Mr. Callen, Mr. Culpepper, Ms. Franklin, Ms. Manning, Ms. Martin, Ms. Melnick, and Ms. Owens.
Thank you. Would you please join me in observing the moment of silence, and after that, we will have the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand as you are able for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, now we get to have probably our favorite part of any school board meeting. It's when we get to recognize those great students and great staff members that we have here in Virginia Beach. So we will now go to the Student and Employee Awards and Recognition part of the meeting. Ms. Manning?
This evening, I have the pleasure of recognizing some of our state wrestling champions. Our first recognition this evening is for a Lansdowne High School student who is a Region 6A state wrestling champion. Please welcome Yuta Otero. Yuta qualified for the VHSL 6A state wrestling tournament by winning the Region 6A tournament in the 132-pound weight class. In the semifinal round of the state tournament, Yuta won by tech fall with a score of 15-0. Yuta's impressive dominance continued in the final as he pinned his opponent 1 minute and 52 seconds in the first period to become state champion. For the season, Yuta finished with an overall record of 53-5 and graduates as one of the most successful wrestlers in school history. Congratulations, Yuta. We are proud of you. Our next recognition is for two First Colonial High School students who are Region 5A state wrestling champions. Please welcome Thomas Stofka and Colin Peterson. Colin was a state runner-up last year, and he set his sights on winning that elusive state title that day. He worked hard during the offseason. Colin dominated throughout the state tournament and reached his goal of becoming a state heavyweight champion. Thomas reached his goal in becoming a two-time state champion. He is only the third wrestler in First Colonial history to do that. This year, he is the winner of the 157-pound weight class. He will set his sights on winning a third state title next season, which would make him the only wrestler in First Colonial history to do that. Congratulations, Colin and Thomas. We're very proud of you.
And our final recognition this evening is for students from Princess Anne High School. Will the 2023 VHSL Scholastic Bowl State champions please come forward? The Princess Anne High School Scholastic Bowl team capped off a memorable season by capturing the 2023 VHSL Scholastic Bowl State Championship. The team traveled to Jamestown High School on February 25th to compete against the best teams in the state of Virginia and left with the state championship trophy to show for their efforts. The team members are Austin Zhu, Kian Tiao, Ryan Zhou, Icarus Landeker, Trevor Dar, Liam Senzon, Amar Hussein, Micah Sanzone, Morgan Neely, Numan Chowdhury, Izzy Van Diemen, Cameron Spears, Kevin Howe, Eleanor Ford, Layla Hicks, Davey Master, John Manugo, Aaron Barheit, Dux Master, Ravi Choksi, and Coach Jason Tomic. Congratulations to Coach Jason Tomic and the Princess Anne High School Scholastic Bowl team. We are proud of you. This concludes our school board recognitions for this evening. I needed more phonetics.
Okay, we're going to have the adoption of the agenda. There are some modifications to the agenda as presented. First, I want to make, we're going to be changing or adding to the agenda on 15B, action agenda, add ad hoc workforce development committee. And 14, consent agenda, we will be taking the resolution for opioid settlement class action suit out because we did pass it in February, and there was a question about it, but our Attorney General got back with us this afternoon and said that we had passed it in the form that it was correct. So we passed it in the correct form. We don't have to do that again. So we will have taken that off. Are there any other modifications that anybody? Okay. So I need a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Beverly Anderson. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Kathleen Brown. Any discussion? Hearing none, I call for a vote to approve the agenda as presented. All in favor, please raise your hands.
Madam Chair, we have unanimous vote. The motion did pass.
Thank you. So now we will come to number 9, our superintendent's report. There is none, because this is our first meeting of March. It's always on the second meeting. 10, approval of the meeting minutes. There are 2 sets of minutes for February 21st, 2023, the special school board meeting. Are there any modifications to the February 21st, 2023 special school board meeting minutes as presented? Hearing none, I call for a motion to approve the February 21st, 2023 minutes as presented. Ms. Franklin, seconded. Do I have a second? Ms. Martin. Any discussion? Hearing none, I call for a vote to approve the February 21st, 2023 minutes as presented. All in favor, please raise your hands.
Madam Chair, we have unanimous vote. The motion did pass.
Thank you. The second set of minutes are for February 28th, 2023, our regular school board meeting. The minutes were updated to note the adjournment time as 1:02 a.m., not p.m. Are there any additional modifications to the February 28th, 2023 regular school board meeting minutes as updated on March 13th and presented? Hearing none, I call for a motion to approve the February 28th, 2023 minutes as presented. Ms. Melnick, and seconded by Mr. Callen. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I call for a vote to approve the February 28th, 2023 minutes as presented. All in favor, please raise your hand.
Madam Chair, we have 10 ayes.
Thank you.
And we also have to ask for nays and an abstention.
Okay. All right. Yes. Do we have any nays?
There are no nays,
Any abstentions?
and we have one abstention.
Yes, because of a family emergency, I had to leave early on that date. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Weems.
So, Madam Chair, the motion did pass with 10 ayes, no nays, and one abstention.
Thank you. Next is 11, our public comments, and we will have these until 8 p.m. The school board will now hear public comments on matters relevant to pre-K through 12 public education in Virginia Beach and the business of the school board and the school division from citizens and delegations who signed up with the school board clerk prior to noon today. Speakers are responsible for being in the school board room, auditorium, or online when they are called to speak. If a speaker is not present when called to speak, or is not online or unable to unmute when called to speak, the school board, at its sole discretion, may allow the speaker to speak at the end of the public comment session. The school board also invites the public to submit comments through our group email account, which can be found on our website. Madam Clerk, please introduce the first speaker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Our first student speaker is Emily Labar, then Ella Stanton, then Bradley Fish.
Welcome.
Good afternoon. My name is Emily Labar, and I'm the president of First Colonial High School's Gender Sexuality Alliance. The 2022 model policies are a symptom of a larger problem. Transgender students are othered, both by the world around them and by anti-LGBTQ legislature. These policies foster a culture of intolerance. They send a message to the student body that some of them are respected, some of them are protected, some of them are cared for, but not all. What makes a student deserving of being protected? What makes a student deserving of being treated equally and fairly and with respect? Is it their race, their religion, their gender identity, sexuality, or nationality? Students deserve to be respected not because of their status as a legally protected class, which all of these are, but because every student deserves to be respected, because they're a human being. We cannot allow one group to be marginalized due to our preconceived notions or prejudices. In the chill climate in which we live, we must go against the prevailing wind. Last Thursday, Governor Youngkin was asked questions in a CNN town hall. One of these questions was asked by a transgender student questioning the 2022 model policies. Through the town hall itself, other news media, and social media videos, one of which gained 1.6 million views, the model policies, or rather the questionable nature of the model policies, has garnered widespread attention. This is not positive attention. There is a broad consensus in Virginia Beach against these policies. It's not normal to have more than 50 students speak at school board meetings over the span of 6 months about the same issue. It's not normal for the model policies to be in a holding pattern for this long. During the first 30-day comment period, over 70,000 comments were received. I could draw this speech out asking the rhetorical question of why so much backlash has happened, but after so many months, you know why. And now you know that this backlash, this uproar, it isn't going away.
30
Not in
seconds.
Virginia Beach. Not when our rights are being threatened. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Ella Stanton, Bradley Fish, and then Eden Amato.
Welcome.
Thank you. Lily, Nick, Maddie, Liv, Max, Bella. These are all names of people that I know, names that are not printed on these people's birth certificates. No one in the room would be able to tell which of them are trans based on their name alone. But the truth is, it doesn't matter. All of these people chose not to go by their given names, and that choice is theirs to make, not the school board's. Some are nicknames, some are middle names, and some are completely different names altogether. None of these changes are subjective to only transgender individuals. My name is Ella. If I wanted to go by my middle name, who here in this room would find that offensive? If I wanted to go by a nickname, would any of you here tell me that was not okay? Where do we draw the line? Do we stop the Jacobs from going by Jake or the Elizabeths from going by Ellie? Where does a name become offensive? The answer is simple. It's not the names that are the problem. It's the fear of the unknown, the fear of what we do not understand, the fear of change. I'm not faulting you for fearing change. In fact, it is quite normal. Most humans fear what they do not understand. But change is inevitable, and you can't keep fighting it forever. I'm not asking you to understand why it is absolutely vital that transgender people keep their rights. I'm not even asking you to understand why people are transgender. But you have to embrace the change. Because the abrasiveness towards the unknown is just ignorance in disguise. And ignorance leads to fear, fear leads to hatred, and hatred leads to violence. I have no doubt in my mind that if a group of people's rights are stripped from them, they will not sit quietly as it happens. We are not asking for much. In fact, we're asking for nothing at all. Leave the policies as they are. Do not deny your students, both cis and transgender, the basic respect of going by a different name. Do not deny them their life at school to be free and happy. Do not force policies born out of ignorance to pass and become an excuse for bigotry and hatred. These policies would only harm students and deny them the freedom to be themselves. It will only enforce hatred and
30
despair.
seconds.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Bradley Fish, then Eden Amato, then Geneva Warren.
Welcome.
Thank you. All right. It was mentioned in a previous meeting about why so much time and effort should be devoted to the rights of a group as small as 1% of the population. I am here today to hopefully address that point. Firstly, if you begin to question the validity of rights from minority groups just because of their strength in numbers, then you have already made a grave error in your judgment. What does it matter if there are only a handful of people who would be directly targeted by this transphobic model policy? Do their rights matter less than anyone else's? Of course not. On an individual level, would a person who feels that their assigned gender no longer fits them, why shouldn't they be allowed to experiment and find a way that leads to greater happiness? The pursuit of happiness ought to be considered a noble goal, and any disruption should be treated as a dereliction of duty by the state. I also recall the narrative that children are not experienced enough to make such big decisions, and you are partly right. Any permanent change to oneself should be treated with great care. However, a name is not permanent, and neither are pronouns. Then why do they matter if they aren't permanent? They matter because a state of impermanence does not lessen the importance of an action, especially in children who should not only be allowed but encouraged to explore and express themselves in whatever way they see fit, within the reasonable limits of avoiding harm. The ideas targeted by the model policy are only meant to strip away the dignity of transgender students who are in this phase of exploration. This unacceptance is what leads to unhappiness, and in many cases, extreme cases, of which many are extreme, suicide and depression. If the school board wishes to maintain any just claim to care about their students, then they need to be given the freedoms and responsibilities to lay the first stones that shall be their root in life, stones that they themselves choose as per their right. Childhood is a foundation upon which many things are built. If you disrupt the foundation of a child by not allowing them to find a path that works for them, then you are setting themselves up for failure. You say that if you want them to, then they can make their own changes when they turn 18, or whatever age you can grab out of a hat. But guess what? You can't. If you, as a child, a stage in your life where your brain is constantly learning, are stunted in your youth by not allowing a full expression, then the chances to fulfill yourself and to be happy with who you are will dramatically decrease. If you point to this and say transgender people commit suicide at a higher rate, then I can only imagine why that
30
is.
seconds.
Battered down by a hostile world is no way to live, and I hope that the school board accepts this as fact. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Eden Amato, Geneva Warren, and then Bethany Wilmoth.
Welcome.
Hello, my name is Eden Amato, and I'm a freshman at Lansdowne High School. This testimonial I'm about to read is from my classmate, A. Little. Unfortunately, he couldn't be here tonight. Before I begin, I want to emphasize that he came out to his parents on his own time. He was not outed by somebody else. Quote, "When I got in trouble for something unrelated, my father yelled at me for being trans and called it unnatural. I hid it for him from 3 years. He doesn't think I'm actually trans, and he blamed it on hormones. He doesn't care about who I actually am, he just cares about what I do. I could have perfect grades and do wonderful things, but since I'm trans, I feel like it would all cancel out. I contemplated coming out for 3 years. I don't want to walk down the stage when I graduate with my dead name. My mother never dead names me to people, but my father doesn't even try to call me by my preferred name or pronouns. I've gone by my preferred name for my whole life, so how can that be taken away from me?" End quote. Like I said, he wasn't forced out of the closet. He came out on his own time, and his father has still been unsupportive. He just wants to be called simply by the name he's been called by his entire life. Imagine how much worse it would be if his father found out from the school instead of him. It genuinely scares me that transgender and non-binary students could be mistreated by their own parents just for openly being who they are, especially if the school were to initiate it. This isn't just an issue of political beliefs. Put politics aside, Democrat or Republican, this is an issue of human rights. Trans rights are human rights. It's an issue of the safety of our peers that the school board is meant to protect. It's easy to pass policies without thinking about who they may harm. It's easy to think that it's good for parental rights, but it's forgotten that students may be put into harmful or abusive situations. However, every single one of us has been trying to show how harmful these policies are to transgender students. We've been up late writing speeches, taking time out of our schedules to speak here, and been hit by cars in some cases. That shows how dedicated we are to speaking out for what's right. These policies are quite the opposite of what's right. All we want is equal treatment of transgender and non-binary students without question. As a school board, I'm sure you all understand that all we want is to be treated equally, however we look, whatever we identify as, and whatever name we would like to be called. I hope you will all make the right decision and say no to these policies. Thank you very much for your time.
Our next speaker is Geneva Warren, Bethany Wilmoth, and then Icarus Landacker.
Welcome.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Geneva Warren, and I am a sophomore in VBCPS. Something a lot of people don't know about me is that I don't enjoy repeating myself, especially when I know someone hears me. Over the past couple of meetings, me and my friends have been repeatedly stating the facts of the detrimental effects that will arise if these policies pass. So, for this meeting, I believe a different approach is in order. In order to get you to sympathize with trans students, I believe you deserve to hear what the average day of life for a trans student is. To do so, I was luckily able to get a statement from an amazing friend of mine. Here's what he has to say. Typical day for me, Monday edition. 6 a.m., wake up. 6:15 a.m., actually get up. By 6:30-ish, I've gotten up, got dressed, packed my bag, and maybe have eaten breakfast by this point. 7 a.m., leave for school. 7:05 a.m., get to school. 7:15 a.m., bell for first block. 7:20 a.m., first block starts, Algebra 2. 8:50 a.m., first block ends. 8:55 a.m., second block starts, AP Euro or Criminal Justice. 10:25 a.m., third block starts, Orchestra or Study block. 11:50 a.m., third block ends. 11:50 to 12:30 p.m., lunch with my friends. 12:35 p.m., fourth block starts, mock trial. 12:35 to 2 p.m., fourth block ends, and school's over. 2 to 3 p.m., forensics practice, that's on Mondays. 2 to 3:50 p.m., debate practice, Wednesday. 4 to 5 p.m., math tutoring. Do you notice anything about his testimony that sticks out? How about the fact that this is almost, if not absolutely, identical to many other cisgender and trans students alike? What I'm trying to illustrate is that trans students are no different than cisgender students, so why should they be treated as such? Do you understand the irrationality and sheer discrimination these policies will impose on students just trying to live their most fulfilling lives? If you take away trans rights, if you remove the basic right of respect of other humans regardless of their age, you will lose so much credibility in the eyes of your students. You can't claim to act out of love, then implement policies based on hate. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Bethany Wilmoth, Icarus Landacker, and then Jay Cook.
Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Bethany Wilmoth. I'm a freshman at Salem High School, and I'm here today to speak against the 2022 model policies. Marsha P. Johnson once said, "You never completely have your rights, one person, until you have all your rights." Marsha P. Johnson, born on August 24th, 1945, was a black transgender woman who had a heavy role in the gay rights movement, specifically the Stonewall riots, the riots that opened the eyes of citizens nationwide, telling them that the LGBT community would no longer be silenced. Her, alongside many other transgender women, such as Sylvia Rivera, paved the way for not only the transgender community, but the LGBT community as a whole to earn the rights they have in America today. Her impact on gay and transgender students is something immeasurable. She died at 46, found floating down the Hudson River. It was initially ruled a suicide, but the case was reopened as a possible homicide. Her and many others were beaten, killed, or arrested on the basis of achieving the rights that the LGBT community has today. To people outside looking in, these changes the school board is suggesting may seem minor. But to everyone who has lived these realities, it's undoing decades of work that have led up to this moment right here. People did not die for this. They died in hope that one day we wouldn't have to have this conversation. They died in hope that we would see them as just that, people. The same as you and me. I may be crazy, but that don't make me wrong. One of my favorite quotes Marsha left behind. It's one for all of us to think about. You might think the other speakers and I are crazy. You might think we're oblivious or young or just plain sensitive. But we will not conceal our outrage for the sake of convenience. Say what you want, think what you want. At the end of the day, the students will keep fighting back. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Icarus Landacker, Jay Cook, and then Finn Sproul.
Welcome.
Hello, my name is Icarus Landacker, and I am an IB student at Princess Anne High School. We have been here for months, right here in this room, at this spot, drowning you in statistics of all the lives lost and lives that will be lost, but we have yet to hear a reply. Instead, we hear the same two words echoed back at us: parental rights. As if those two words resurrect the souls that have passed on. As if those words build a shield around transgender students so that the words chucked at them like sticks and stones just bounce off. If this was truly about parental rights, then this issue would have come up when my cisgender peers started putting their nicknames in the school records instead of their birth name. But did my friend Alexandria have to attend school board meetings and face hateful comments just to have her nickname Lexi entered into the system? No, of course not, because she is not trans. Let's get one thing straight. The opposition to transgender rights here is not for student protection. If it was, we all would be taking action on much more pressing issues. For example, Ms. Pence last meeting referenced a sexual assault case in Northern Virginia by a transgender male student. This case, like others, was not about transgender individuals. It was about sexual assault. Two very different topics. In spite of our schools telling us every year how stereotyping people is wrong and immoral, we have seen transgender students stereotyped as monsters and criminals. Sexual assault can happen to anyone and can be committed by anyone. In fact, transgender individuals are 4 times more likely to be victims of rape or sexual violence. Additionally, between 2015 and 2016, over 12,000 occurrences of sexual assault happened in schools across Virginia. But which one got the spotlight? The one with the transgender assailant. Why? Why have people decided to pay attention to one case out of thousands? Why have parents suddenly started to push towards a solution to this problem when it just so happens to involve a party they do not like? It is because this is not about parental rights or student safety to them. If it was, they would have started taking action long before this. No, this is about discrimination and censorship of transgender students. Let me leave you with one more story. We have stood before you building walls of statistics, but they have seemed to have blocked
30 seconds.
your view. So let me just lay one brick in front of you tonight. Just one story. 5 days ago, a friend of mine in the VPCPS school system attempted suicide. They are non-binary. It is just one number, but that is an entire life that was almost taken from us, from me. Do not hide behind the lie of parental rights, because if you do, then you hide behind the truth of student deaths. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Jay Cook, Finn Spruill, and then Alana Spencer.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, board members. My name is Jay Cook, and I'm a transgender student at Ocean Lakes High School. I did not choose to be trans. In fact, some days I truly wish I wasn't. Days on which I wake up and I look in the mirror and I feel so wrong, so miserable, like I'm looking straight at all of my unhappiness. And I think to myself how easy it would be to kill it. I think to myself, I do not want to live like this anymore. I think life would be so much easier if I was not me. Some of you may ask why I simply cannot forfeit my identity, why I cannot stand to be a daughter, a sister, a she or a her or a hers, when my identity some days is my greatest anguish. The answer to that is simple. The anguish stems from my biological sex and sex characteristics, not from my gender identity. It stems from the times I am invalidated and misgendered at home, in public, and even in school. It stems from the policies like these, which depersonalize me and my friends through violations of our identities and our privacy. Due to familial circumstances, I am currently unable to medically transition. It eats at me. According to Effective Sex Reassignment on Mental Well-Being and the Quality of Life, a journal on PubMed.gov, a medical transition is the only known treatment for gender dysphoria. The only known treatment. Not conversion, not invalidation, not erasure. And since I'm unable to transition, I'm forced to sit with my dysphoria as it threatens to eat me alive. One of the only solaces in my day-to-day life is the use of my name and my pronouns by my friends, teachers, and by administrators at school. The times in which people call me or mention me, and I am Jay. I'm Jay. It eases the dysphoria that sits in me. In a way, it's like my lifeline, a fuel for my ever-dwindling hope that I have a future as myself to look forward to, that I will get there. This policy will take away that, not just from me, but from all the trans youth who I know feel similar things, who may even be more affected than myself. You have heard the stories and feelings of other trans students, and now you've heard mine. You know the dread this policy puts into our hearts. You know the consequences, and yet we are still here, fighting against the oppression we did not ask for. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Finn Spruill, Alana Spencer, and then Alex Astaroth.
Welcome.
Good evening, members of the school board. My name is Finn Spruill, and I'm a transgender male. I attend Kempsville High School. I'm here today to advocate for myself and on behalf of the LGBTQ community at my school. I believe that within the VVCPS district, we should include nicknames on the printed out roster. When a substitute is assigned a class, they pick up a printed out roster from the front office of the school. On this paper, it lists all the legal names pulled directly from Synergy. Unless your name is legally changed, the name in Synergy will stay the same. Although this is understandable due to identification purposes, this causes backlash amongst myself and many others. Doing this would alleviate stress from both students and teachers, as well as help build equity and belonging amongst students. Due to so many kids in each class, it is difficult for teachers to remember to leave notes of preferred names, especially if several students go by different names. I have personally asked all my teachers to leave notes every time I know they will not be there or we will have a substitute. Even when teachers leave notes on their personal roster or desk, some substitutes do not get around to reading those notes. In order to have a nickname added into Synergy, all you have to do is speak to your counselor, and they will insert your preferred name into Synergy. From then on, your nickname will be used in documents where legal name is not required. This is a much easier and temporary process than getting your name legally changed. Legally changing your name is a much more difficult process. You must fill out required forms, pay the fee, and wait between a day to 6 months. This process is both lengthy and permanent, as well as a parent or guardian must be present and authorize this change if you are a minor. Some students may go by a different name at home, while others may not. Students must act with responsible judgment when asking for a nickname to be added. I feel as having a nickname and Synergy printed out along with the legal names would greatly benefit the students' well-being. All that would need to be done is edit how the names are printed. Simply adding the nickname in parentheses next to the legal name and notifying teachers to address students as the name in parentheses would eliminate dead naming for transgender students. Although I feel as this issue largely affects the LGBTQ students the most, other students who prefer a different name also experience this issue. This is a simple fix to a major problem as
30
well
seconds.
as a step towards greater things. Our schools have come a long way, but we have a long way to go. I truly hope you consider my proposition. Thank you for your time.
Our next speaker is Alana Spencer, Alex Astrod, and then Jacob Cruz.
Welcome.
Good evening, board members. I'm speaking against the 2022 model guidelines alongside my friends once more. And a couple of days ago, I watched Glenn Youngkin's educational discussion at Town Hall, and he said parental involvement is important. And I agree with that. Parents play a huge role in a child's lives and impact the development of a child and who they will be. And our parents taught us a lot, especially before school age, how to tie our shoes, how to count to 10, or that Ravens is the best football team. Yes, parents are important, but eventually it comes a time for us to go to school, and I remember seeing my parents' worried faces when they sent me to school for the first time and seeing that look each time with my younger siblings. But in the back of their mind, they knew that they didn't have to worry because they were sending us to a great school district. And schools without saying is a huge part of a student's life. So naturally, teachers begin to play a big role in our lives. I'm sure everyone in this room could name a moment when a teacher had really impacted them. The 2022 policies would take away the safety and the comfort of a caring teacher and replace them with a teacher that isn't allowed to connect with or value every student because the student isn't the majority. A great school environment is crucial. That's why you put in so much effort in guaranteeing that each student is valued. Your hard work allows students to guarantee that every student is cared for, safe, respected, and educated. Every single student. That's what you promised us. Glenn Youngkin stated that he designed these policies to accommodate as many students as possible. I'm not a parent, but I don't think any parent sends their kids to school to maybe or maybe not be accommodated. I don't think those same worried parents send their kids to school just for a chance that they would have a good education. So by enforcing these policies for the majority, it allows the school to avoid, alienate, and ostracize the minority. The minority are trans students who are already discriminated against, deemed controversial, and more likely to be put in dangerous situations. Youngkin said, "I know all kids want their parents. I know this is true as well. I know all kids want a supportive parent, but not all kids have supportive parents, no matter how much they wish to have them. And to refuse to talk about the gravity of unsupporting homes is reckless. Enacting these policies put those kids in danger no matter how you put it. Trans kids are more likely to encounter violence, trafficking, and homelessness. Implementing the 2022 policies put trans kids in danger, and that's not fair. And just as Youngkin stated, it's not fair for a group to gain opportunity and have it taken away. And he's right, it's not fair for a set of policies that don't value all students to promote discrimination, hate, and harm of its students to replace a set of policies that were meticulously studied and made to
30
include
seconds.
everyone. Value differences and to teach inclusivity. It's not fair to be forced to move backwards. Glenn Youngkin said parents should be involved in difficult decisions of their kids, and I believe they should as well. But the one difficult moment that I'm sure a parent doesn't want to have is where they have to tell their kid that their school doesn't care about them or anybody like them. Deny the 2022 model policies. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Alex Astrod, and then Jacob Cruz.
Welcome.
Thank you. Respect is not a political issue. Dignity is not a political issue. And human rights are not a political issue. Now, some people here may want you to believe that we are fighting for some extreme leftist propaganda, belittling the rights of cisgender students in an attempt to create some leftist school division. The reality is that we are not and have never been that. We are merely standing here with our transgender classmates who want nothing more than respect and their names. We are standing here asking you to respect the students you are tasked with representing. We are asking you to respect the human rights of your students regardless of your political leanings. And you can look at me. As many of you may already know, I am a Republican and I've stood for conservative principles and politicians from all of my life, and I still do. However, there is nothing conservative about bullying students for being different. There is nothing conservative about dead naming and misgendering your students under the guise of parental rights. And there is nothing conservative about forcing children to conform to identities the state mandates upon them. This is not about conservative versus liberal. This is not about right versus left. This is about right versus wrong. This is about common sense. Because it is common sense that not all parents are supportive. It is common sense that outing students to unsupportive parents will lead to abuse. And it should be common sense that we must stand against abusive policies at all costs. Because it is common sense that protecting the safety of our students should be the top priority of this board. If we enforce these policies as they currently stand, we will be endangering so many students needlessly because parental rights apparently trumps child safety. We are not trying to make a difference. We are not trying to change the way our schools operate. We are standing for the protections VBCPS has lended its students for as long as I have been in school. We are standing against radical policies imminently being put into place by a state government that is out of touch with our principles. If there is any value that is conservative, it is preserving what we have as a community. It is preserving the status quo that has respected the rights of transgender students and given them a place where they can feel safe and valued. We are asking this board to conserve what this school division has spent decades building. I am asking this board to protect the basic human rights of its students. I am asking this board to be conservative and reject these model policies. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Jacob Cruz.
Welcome.
Good evening, board members. This right here on my lapel is a safety pin. Most people probably know this just as a simple craft supply, but it actually has a rich history as a symbol of activism. It started in the Netherlands during World War II. The Nazi regime, while occupying this nation, committed numerous horrific acts across it. And in this tragedy, wearing safety pins or getting a tattoo of a safety pin became a way for native Dutchmen to communicate to one another that they could be trusted. In the 1970s, safety pins transformed into a symbol of trust and goodwill to the LGBTQ community, commonly seen in the punk scene in the UK. And then in the midst of Brexit, safety pins were revived yet again as a symbol against the xenophobia and violence that was happening all across the UK. I don't tell you this because of my deep fascination with safety pins or anything. I tell you this because towards the start of this school year, I started seeing safety pins fixed to people's jackets and sweaters throughout school, and I wondered what it was about. And once I learned, I realized this is just yet another sign of the times. It's an indictment on our community that our students are compelled to use safety pins to assure each other that they're not a threat. You can tell trans students and their friends that they're histrionic for wearing these pins, but that doesn't change the fact that they are truly in fear. They feel like their community has people who are out to get them, and they feel obligated to wear a symbol of safety against them. This isn't a warning This isn't the first warning that I've given about the kinds of fears that trans students live under. In fact, it probably isn't the second, third, fourth, or fifth. You've heard it too many times now, but that should say something. I know that we often come to these meetings without too much new to say. In fact, no one is more aware of it as us, as we're desperately trying to just rumble through our brains for the way to articulate our position in a way that you haven't heard yet. But that's not going to stop us. Every day at lunch, I sit in the courtyard of my school, and I see safety pins on students' jackets, and that motivates me to keep coming, even if I have to repeat the same ideas. No matter how tired I am of coming to these meetings, and no matter how tired you are, and I know you are, of hearing our same things being said over and over again, the fact still stands that trans students need help. They need someone fighting for them. You have a choice here. You can give a ray of hope to students who are living in fear, and you can give love to students who feel completely alone, or you can take the knife that is already inside of the queer community or our schools and you can twist it in even deeper. That's up to you. All I know is that I'm going to put some
30 seconds.
All I know is that I'm going to put some safety pins on my jackets, and I'm going to keep speaking at these meetings if that makes my friends feel a little bit more safe. Thank you.
Madam Chair, we're going to move on to our online student speaker. Jana Saltesiak, please unmute.
Hello.
Hello. You can speak.
Okay. Hello, my name is Jana Saltesiak, and I am a student at Kellam High School. I spoke a year and a half ago in September 2021 to ask that you support our transgender students in VBCPS. And that night, you created a policy that, while it didn't do everything I wanted to protect my friends, did create some new and much needed protections for our students. Thank you for those that did that back then. Since then, the Virginia Department of Education created a new model policy that, if implemented in Virginia Beach, would roll back many of the protections that we fought for then. Our current policies, while not as good as I would like, are already in compliance with Virginia law. In the Code of Virginia, section 22.1 to 23.3, treatment of transgender students policies, it states that each school board shall adopt policies that are consistent with, but may be more comprehensive than the model policies developed by the Department of Education pursuant to subsection A. Our current policies are more comprehensive and more protective than the new model policies created by Governor Youngkin's Department of Education. I join with the students that have been coming to urge you to reject any decrease in the protection of our students in Virginia Beach School Board policies, and to keep our schools as a place that is safe for transgender students than the newer model policies would have them be. I join with the students in urging the school board to create a resolution to reject the changes of the model policies created by Governor Youngkin's Department of Education. I haven't been here since then, but I have been listening and hearing the chorus of voices of students, former students, parents, and educators over the past months. And I'm so inspired to join in and continue to bring this movement to my friends at Kellum. As I am coming to a close, I want to make sure that you are aware of one last thing. I have spoken to you as a student several times over the last 4 years, trying to create change this way. But in 2 years, when many of you are up for re-election, I will be voting in my first election. Most of these students who have been coming and speaking here will be voting in your next election too. All of us have been watching what you're doing at these meetings. We come from Kellum, Ocean Lakes, First Colonial, Princess Anne, and Salem, among others. We are paying attention, and the numbers are growing. If you change for Virginia Beach School Board policies and leave some of our LGBT plus friends vulnerable to bullying and harm, what do you think will happen during that next election? Do you not realize that the same thing as students have been doing at meetings will happen at the polls? We will show up. We will bring 10 of our friends with us to vote. There are students that have
30
taken off work
seconds.
or activities to be here. Do you not believe they will take off work to work at the polls and spread the word there? I speak as a student today, but I remind you that I and many other students here will be voters next time you are up for election. And we are committed. We are paying attention. And do not doubt that we will vote based on what we see. Thank you.
Madam Chair, that was our last student speaker for the night. We will move on to our next set of speakers. Brenda Pence, speaker number 2 had to cancel. So it'll be Camden Dunkerley and then Lisa Varga. Brenda Pence. Camden Dunkerley. Lisa Varga.
Welcome.
Thank you. Sorry, that was a surprise. Happened much sooner than I expected. Good evening, Dr. Spence, Chair Riggs, and members of the school board. I am here tonight to address some inconsistency in messaging from a member of the board, Ms. Manning. Last week at a meeting, Ms. Manning said she had not put forth any changes to selection of materials policies recently, policy 6-65. However, a Freedom of Information Act request I put in late last week proved that to be untrue. I have a copy of Ms. Manning's suggested revisions here, and I just want to make sure we have some transparency about what she is suggesting, as well as an understanding of the ways in which these changes infringe on the First Amendment. Because Part A is so problematic and a jumble of inconsistency, I'll skip on to the second page, which is almost a word-for-word copy-paste of a bill submitted to the General Assembly this year that failed. Items 4 to 6 on the list are things that are already being done at all schools in Virginia Beach, so I'd like to take a moment to shed some light on rating systems and labeling, which items 1 to 3 attempt to do. If we are just going to copy and paste things, I'll just reuse what I said when I spoke against this bill in the General Assembly last month. Rating systems, such as those for movies, video games, and music, are voluntary and unenforceable, and they also come from the source of the creators tied to the distribution of those materials. Any attempt at rating books should come from publishers, not from each individual school in every community in the Commonwealth, nor in the country.
This attempts to impose a one-size-fits-all solution on local systems who already have systems in place to address these concerns. It ignores the fact that students have a choice in which books they select from school libraries and the role that parental responsibility plays in the books their children are choosing to read. I am the executive director of the Virginia Library Association. We represent about 5,000 librarians and library staff in the Commonwealth. And I have worked with librarians in this state and around the United States for the last 25 years. This campaign against books is detrimental to the learning and literacy of our students. Many of us in this room know exactly what the intent of all of these policies and rules are, even if you don't say the quiet part out loud. I will not stop. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Beth Labar, then Don Labar, then Melissa Lukeson.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, members of the board and Dr. Spence. I'm Beth Labar. I'd like to reiterate my concern as a mother and a school social worker regarding the aspects of the 2022 model policies as they pertain to transgender and non-binary students. As a school social worker, I'm trained to use best practices, ideally evidence-based, to support culturally sensitive interactions within the educational setting. The 2022 model policies show no signs of being evidence-based, nor do they reflect the consensus of best practices surrounding the issue of providing equitable education for all students, including transgender students. Evidence-based best practices dictate that policies in education should be rooted in science, and the main goal should be establishing policies that provide the best outcomes for students. The evidence is clear that treating transgender students consistent with their gender identity is crucial for the students' mental health and their academic outcomes. Inclusive policies have been shown to reduce the amount of harassment transgender and non-binary students face in school, and in turn, improve their academic performance. As an involved parent, I hope that my children feel safe coming to me with any issue regardless of the topic. However, if they did not feel comfortable discussing their gender identity with me, I would want them to have a trusted adult to talk to until they felt ready to talk with me. It is in all our best interests to let school be a place where all students feel that they are truly valued and accepted. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Don Labar, then Melissa Lukeson.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Don Labar. I'm a Virginia Beach resident, and I have 3 kids educated through Virginia Beach City Public Schools. I want to thank the school board for their time listening to the students, teachers, and concerned parents regarding the proposed 2022 model guidelines. Can you imagine what it would be like if you did not adopt these policies? Would it be pandemonium? Would students come every week to talk about it? Would parents come and talk about it? I don't think so. Because what we're asking for is just to keep things the way they are. We're not asking for anything different. We like how things are, and we want to keep it that way. We want students to feel safe. Life is not black and white. Just like slavery was not totally about states' rights, this issue is not totally about parents' rights. I believe that states should have rights, but to say that their rights overrule justice for a minority group of people is not right. Just as I believe parents have rights, but to say that their rights overrule justice for a minority group of students, that's not right. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Melissa Lukeson.
Welcome.
Good evening. My goal in 2023 is focused on transparency. The way to transparency is FOIA requests on behalf of the citizens. Through a recent request, I learned some things. There's a rumor circulating there was a sexual assault of a girl by a transgender male in the bathroom at First Colonial High School that took place on February 8th, 2023. The school board and VBCPS admin were notified by a private citizen on February 9th via email. The Title IX coordinator, Dr. Reese, requested this citizen's support and compliance with the investigation. The citizen's response was that the source wanted to remain anonymous, but school board member Vicki Manning was contacted before they were, so she has the information. On February 14th, Dr. Reese made the same request to Ms. Manning for compliance and names of the individuals involved. Ms. Manning's response was vague and avoidant. She stated she asked for information, but the complainants did not want to give that information. She also stated that she told these people that it was under investigation, but I don't know how or when she told them that because there are no records indicating how the friend of an FC teacher and the spouse of another FC teacher told Mrs. Manning or when she responded. It is no coincidence that some adult speakers have made references to the majority of student speakers organizing to support their transgender peers and friends attend First Colonial High School. After months of putting pressure on the board, an unsubstantiated allegation involving a transgender student in a bathroom pops up, and the people who know where it originated from are unwilling to comply with an official investigation. One of our impressive students tonight mentioned the misinformation shared by an adult speaker. That speaker tried to recirculate the false claim that the Loudoun County bathroom assault was by a transgender student. Court records and testimony showed the truth. It was not a transgender student, but the truth doesn't fit their political narrative. Ms. Manning knows 2 teachers, the spouse, and a 3rd or 4th removed friend of those teachers and the citizen who initially reported it. Not only is Ms. Manning obstructive with an official investigation, but she also didn't think enough of the allegation to report it to anyone. Ms. Manning, why did you not report this? I thought your principals would demand that if a sexual assault was reported to you, that you would have turned in the necessary information unless, as your tone in the email indicates, you believe it to be a rumor. And of course, if that rumor benefits your political agenda and targets our high school students that have been putting pressure on you, you preach about protecting children, especially from predators and groomers, but you decided that the possible assault of a student wasn't important enough to report? Is it because the rumor was started about a transgender student? From my perspective, you have made a concerted and tactical decision to allow a rumor to harm some of our students for your political benefit. I will be requesting your phone records. Maybe once I have your call and text logs for those dates of concern, we can get to the bottom of this. If I suspect you have left out a sentence,
And that is time.
a text, or call, I will file
And that is
a
time.
complaint.
We are going to move on to our online speaker. Suzanne Saltesiak, please unmute.
Welcome.
Hello. Hello. Wow, that's something to follow up with, but wow. Hello, I'm not coming about that. My name is Suzanne Saltesiak, and I'm speaking tonight about the policy to change our graduation process to include valedictorian and salutatorian. I'm a parent of 2 high schoolers, and I oppose this policy change and ask you to vote against it. The position of those who oppose the policy has been misrepresented by its proponents of not wanting to reward academics. That couldn't be further from the truth. It is about not wanting to create policies that hurt our students just to have a political talking point. How does this hurt our students? Well, let's look at the history of why it started. It wasn't a policy about equity at all. The move to do away with class rank actually started at elite, expensive private schools. See, the parents there realized that getting into a small elite private school sounded good until they realized that their straight A student went to that school with a class of 100 kids that were all straight A students. It put them at a disadvantage with class rank. Coming in the bottom 20% of 100 straight A kids in an elite program actually ended up disqualifying some kids in the college and scholarship applications. So those elite programs stopped giving the rank and percentages to remove that disadvantage. That's how it started. Being able to get into a highly academic and elite program shouldn't put you in a disadvantage in that. By bringing back valedictorian and salutatorian, you actually force our students to fill out applications by saying that they know their class rank when other prestigious schools have students applying that do not. And this works against our students being able to get into those schools because providing this works against them. Second, it misleads students into what academic excellence looks like. Because there are weighted and unweighted classes, we know that many students are achieving GPAs as high as 5. Well, if that student takes a class like public speaking, the highest amount of points they can get in the class is 4.0. And what happens when 4.0 gets added into 5.0? It brings the GPA down. So instead of encouraging a student to take a class like tech ed, public speaking, art, drama, that can help them in their career or their mental health, or their college work, their career. We are now rewarding students to choose to take study hall or leave early instead of taking classes that further themselves. Is that really what we want to reward? Playing the numbers gamer over pursuing academic excellence and workplace readiness? Are we telling them that study hall is more valuable to them than art or music? Finally, valedictorian and salutatorian assumes that making a speech is a reward that students want.
30 seconds.
I'll leave you with the tale of my sister, a Salem grad from 2000. Very high achieving, and when she went to graduation rehearsal, found out she was currently ranked to be salutatorian. She did not want to spend her graduation celebration week worrying about writing a speech and feeling anxious. So she went to her finals and intentionally bombed one just to make sure she didn't have a speech, have to make a speech and could enjoy it. Let's reward true academic achievement with the Latin honor system and not add valedictorian and salutatorian.
And that is time. And Madam Chair, that was our last speaker for this evening.
Thank you. The 12th item on the agenda is information. There is no items under that tonight. And there are no more public comments. Am I correct? Okay, so we're going to move on to 14, consent agenda. The following will be under the consent agenda. It's the Policy Review Committee recommendations. Policy 2.1, Management Plan / Goals and Objectives. 2, Policy 2.2, Definition. 3, Policy 2-5, Superintendent Qualifications. 4, Policy 2-6, Superintendent Recruitment and Selection Procedures. 5, Policy 2-7, Superintendent Appointment / Term of Office / Oath / Compensation. 6, Policy 2-8, Superintendent Powers / Duties / Responsibilities. 7, Policies 2-9, Superintendent Evaluation. 8, Policy 2-10, Superintendent Vacancy in Office / Acting Superintendent / Fines / Suspension / Separation / Conditions of Employment. 9, Policy 2-13, Job Descriptions. 10, Policy 2-14, Organizational Structure. 11, Policy 2-19, Administrative Action in Absence of Policy. 12, Policy 2-20, Review of Administrative Decisions / Board of Request of Administrators. 13, Policy 2-33, Coordinators, Title IX / Section 504 / ADA. 14, Policy 7-49, Organizations eligible to use facilities. And B is taken off of the agenda, the opioid settlement. So are there any objections to the school board voting on the consent agenda items?
Madam Chair, there was one correction we discussed last time to one of these policies that didn't get made. Can I point that out before we vote on it? I don't mind voting on it, but I just want to point out the error.
Hear what you said? Can you speak into
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
We pointed out an error in one of these policies last time that didn't get corrected. Can I point that out before we vote on it?
Which one is it?
7, TAC 49, paragraph B1.
Number 14, 7-49?
Yeah, 7-49, paragraph B1. All it is a punctuation. It was changed to a period. It was a semicolon. The semicolon is corrected, consistent with the formatting.
Okay, thank you. Any other? Ms. Linetti?
Madam Chair, do we need to pull that policy back to make the Scrivener change, or do you want to, from the floor, make an amendment?
Do we need to do that? No.
It's a Scrivener error. If the rest of the board is okay with it, we'll correct it, and then.
Madam Chair, the change, are you saying after annually, period? Okay, I'm sorry.
Trying to find it.
I think it's okay to vote on that. That's a pretty minor correction. It doesn't change.
It doesn't change the meaning of it or anything. It's just.
If there's no objection by the board, we'll make that Scrivener change when we afterwards and correct it before it's published on the website.
Right, and I don't see anybody shaking their heads that we need to do that. Okay, we're good? Okay, any other objections or concerns? Okay, hearing no call to move an item from the consent agenda, I call for a motion to approve all of the items on the consent agenda as presented. Do I have a motion? Mr. Culpepper moved and seconded by Mrs. Melnick. Do any of the members need to recuse themselves from the vote due to a possible conflict of interest or lack of impartiality? Okay. With no recusals, I call for a vote to approve the consent agenda as presented. All in favor, please raise your hands.
Madam Chair, we have a unanimous vote. The motion did pass.
Thank you. Number 15, the action. Personnel report, administrative appointments. Dr. Spence?
Madam Chair,
That's
you
right,
need to
we need
call
to
for a
vote
motion
before
to
you do
approve.
that. Okay. All right, let me go to B. No, let's do A first, I'm sorry, and then we'll come to a vote. Do I have a motion to accept the personnel report, administrative appointments? Yes, Ms. Owens, and seconded by Ms. Melnick. Any discussion? Do any of the school board members need to recuse themselves from the vote due to a possible conflict of interest or lack of impartiality? With no recusals, I call for a vote to approve the March 14th, 2023 personnel report and administrative appointments. All in favor, please raise your hands.
Madam Chair, we have a unanimous vote. The motion did pass.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Spence.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We do have one administrative appointment this evening. We'd like to ask Tiffany Jacobs to please stand. So you all will recognize Tiffany. She has served here in Virginia Beach since 2004. She was an administrative office associate in the Office of Gifted Education and Academy Program. She's been an educational data analyst at Renaissance Academy, grants manager in the Office of Budget Development. Most recently has been serving as Assistant Director of Maintenance Services in the Office of Facility and Maintenance Services. And this evening, we're pleased you've accepted our recommendation for her to return to her position as grants manager in the Office of Budget Development. And nobody's more pleased than Crystal Pate. Congratulations. And I think you have some guests with you, Tiffany. Good stuff. Nice to see you, Chris. All right, thank you both. That's it.
Thank you, Dr. Spence. B, the Ad Hoc Workforce Development Committee. Before we take a vote, is there any possible conflict of interest with that? We need to discuss that.
Point of order, Madam Chair. You need to read the motion.
Okay, I need a motion to accept this.
So moved.
This is the let me say it one more time. This is the Ad Hoc Workforce Development Committee that Ms. Weems had asked about. Okay, so
Madam Chair, do you have the motion in front of you? We can read that, then they'll understand.
You want me to read it?
That might help them to make sure everybody in the public understands what it is you're doing.
Got it. All right, the purpose of the Ad Hoc Committee.
Point of order. Could we please have this in writing that we could all see it? I mean, I know you're going to read it, but I'm one of those people that's kind of visual. I'd like to see this in writing first.
Do you have
I don't have the extra copies. I'm not sure. Do we have it? Do you want me to send it to you electronically?
give it to Ms. Anderson, please. Anybody else need it?
I think it prudent that every one of us should have a copy of this if we're going to be voting on it. So could we?
We'll take a
possibly
3-minute
make some
recess and we'll
copies or
make
have
copies.
someone make copies? Thank you.
Yes.
If we're on discussion for this, are we haven't made the motion yet?
We're in recess. Yeah.
Right, thanks.
Okay. We are back to our meeting and out of recess. So let's start this again. I call for a motion. I move that the school board appoint the following ad hoc committee in accordance with bylaw 1-28EB. Ad hoc Workforce Development Committee. The purpose of the Ad hoc Workforce Development Committee is to prepare a report to the school board and the city council regarding the needs of the city of Virginia Beach for current and future workforce development. The Ad hoc Workforce Development Committee will complete its work and send its report to the school board and the city council by April 1st, 2024. The ad hoc committee will be chaired by school board member Carolyn Weems. One additional school board member and one alternate school board member will also be appointed by the school board to serve on the ad hoc committee. The city council may appoint 2 city council members and 1 alternate city council member as committee members. The school board members and city council members will appoint school or city staff members as well as members of the community with relevant experience to serve on the ad hoc committee. All members will serve without remuneration. Do I have a second? Ms. Franklin. Is there anyone that needs to recuse themselves from this vote?
I got a question first.
Possible. Okay. Now we will have discussion. Ms. Owens?
Is there a reason that we added this today rather than put it on in advance where we could get this in advance, talk to our constituents, do whatever we're going to do prior to making a vote? Like we added this on at the beginning of the agenda and then we got a copy of the motion 60 seconds before discussion?
I can answer that. Mrs. Weems asked me today to prepare a notice for a meeting, a pre-planning meeting for the initial group for next Monday, and it occurred to me, it said something to Ms. Riggs, that you haven't actually created this committee. So before Mrs. Weems went ahead and had that meeting next week, they needed the board to vote on it. This is not a situation where the chair can just appoint a board. So I handed it to Mrs. Riggs coming in saying, you need to make a decision about this because Mrs. Weems is due to have a meeting next week.
So there was like a scheduled meeting as if this had already been approved by the board already in play?
Ms. Weems, you want to answer that?
No. We've been talking about this committee since the 1st of January. I brought it up. We wanted to have, the vice mayor contacted me. We wanted to get together and discuss kind of the parameters of the committee, what it's going to look like before she presented it officially and before I presented it. We don't really legally need to even post it because we're just getting together and talk about the parameters, but for transparency's sake, I thought it was the best thing to go ahead and post a meeting. It's an organizational meeting. And so that's what we did, because I wanted to be transparent and let everybody know that we are going to be talking. There's not going to be 2 school board members. It's just going to be us getting together and trying to figure out the parameters exactly of this committee so that we can move forward instead of just saying, we're having a workforce development committee. We really don't know what we're doing, or, so we're going to be discussing that. And so that's why I went ahead and thought that we should post it to let everybody know we are going to have that discussion. Legally by FOIA, we don't have to, but I just wanted everybody to know about it.
Okay, and when you say we, that's you and somebody?
Well, nobody has to, but by FOIA, you don't have to post it because there's not 2 school board members. I mean, 3 school board members. So legally, we don't have to post it at all. We could have just met, and then I could have come back and said, this is what we think this is what the vice mayor, and I kind of think the committee should look like. What do y'all think? But I wanted to let y'all know that we were meeting. I mean, it's as simple as that. So we're gonna discuss it, yeah.
Okay. So, Madam Chair, I just want to make sure I understand. This could be voted on tonight or could not be voted on tonight, but doesn't impact the meeting that Ms. Weems wants to have, because that's not a meeting that needs anything, correct?
I think there are 2 different arguments here. For FOIA purposes, you don't have enough elected officials to constitute a school board meeting that requires notice on it. I did have a concern that if you were going to post a notice out there, people might say, well, what committee is this? So I thought that I brought it to the chair's attention. You might want to bring it up with the board tonight as to whether you want to go forward with that, because if we were actually going to go ahead and post a notice, I didn't want them questioning who had authorized it, because bylaw 128 does require that it be recommended by the chair for an ad hoc committee, but the board itself has to vote on it.
Ms. Weems.
Yeah, so it is the chair's prerogative to appoint an ad hoc committee, but the school board has to vote for it. But, personally, I did not want to put myself in the position of having a discussion, and then all of a sudden I get FOIA'd and I get, oh my gosh, why, Ms. Weems, are you doing things behind the scenes, and why didn't you tell us? That's exactly what I wanted to avoid. I wanted to be transparent, to let you know that I was going to have this discussion and that we're going to talk about the committee, and therefore, Ms. Riggs and I agree that this route would probably be the most transparent and the best understood. But, it doesn't matter to me, actually. But we tried to avoid later, what in the world are you doing behind the scenes, Carolyn? Why are you meeting? Why are you talking about this and didn't let us know, and blah, 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 blah. So we were trying to avoid all that.
Okay, next is Ms. Anderson.
So, Ms. Weems, obviously you've been talking to people about this.
Of course.
I even heard you speaking about it before, and I'm not saying I'm against having this, it's just that there is already an established committee that has to do with our Career and Development Center, and one of the things that has been suggested was that that you participate in that committee before we jump into a task force that we're not really sure we need right now. There has been discussion about this, I get it. It's just that there's no reason that we should have to vote on this tonight. Personally, I'd like to see this deferred on establishing this committee. And if you'd like to talk to, city council people about the possibility of having this committee, I see nothing wrong with that. But I'm not sure we really need this particular committee because of the fact that we already have a committee that you can voice your concerns about our workforce and our career readiness. We already have that going on. So I'm not in favor of jumping into adding this ad hoc workforce development committee at the last minute like this, just so people can be covered and protected from FOIA. As long as you don't have 3 school board members together, then you're still protected by FOIA anyway. You could still discuss things, and I feel like there's some behind-the-scenes things happening that a lot of us are not privy to right now. And it might not be coming from school board members, it might be coming from other people in our city. So I'm not sure that we really need this committee at this time. I'm just not convinced of it. Thank you.
Ms. Melnick.
Okay, so I too am not against the, this ad hoc committee. As someone who relies on the trade industry for my livelihood, I'm all for this. I'm all for workforce development. What I do want to know, though, is what exactly is the goal of this committee? Who is going to be on this committee? And honestly, the only thing I take that makes me pause is the part that says, actually, the beginning of the second paragraph, the ad hoc committee will be chaired by school board member Carolyn Weems. No offense, but it sounds like this is already a done deal and that you are going to meet regardless to put something forward. I just want to know what that something is. That's all. Just, we had a presentation a few weeks ago about our robust tech opportunities, tech center opportunities for our children. And I just want to know what is the purpose other than perhaps that technical and career education is kind of a buzzword right now, and that's just, I just need more clarity here, and I would just like the opportunity to talk about this and not have this just sprung on us tonight.
Okay, Ms. Martin?
I have 3 questions, and I'd really like to defer until we can get some in-depth answers to these questions. First of all, who's meeting on Monday? Is it just Vice Mayor and Ms. Weems? I don't have the answer to that. How do we express our desire and qualifications to serve? I have met previously with City Manager Taylor Adams on wind energy as it relates to tourism and sport fishing, and I'm also interested in the workforce part of that and have credentials in workforce development. And then, is it normal for a chair to be pre-appointed on an ad hoc committee, or is that normally something that is voted on? So those are the 3 things I want to know before I would move forward with this. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, Ms. Manning.
So Ms. Weems, and I believe Ms. Riggs, correct me if I'm wrong, asked for this topic to be discussed at our Policy Review Committee meeting, and so we did discuss this. It was also discussed, there were 2 committees. We're talking about the Mental Health Task Force and this ad hoc committee. This is an ad hoc committee that we've been talking about since January, and actually in a meeting in, I believe, January, several board members expressed interest in serving on the committee. So there has been a number of board members interested in this. We've been talking about it for months. And our Policy Review Committee looked at the policy, looked at the bylaws, and it specifically says that this would fall under an ad hoc committee. And so we said, well, this is something the chair can bring forward to the board, and we told Ms. Riggs that, and that's why we're here now. As far as the question regarding the chair, the bylaw 1-28 says that the school board ad hoc committee and ad hoc committee chair shall be proposed by the school board chair and then appointed by the school board. So that's why the chair was included in this proposal. I think that we should move forward with it. I don't think there's any reason, I don't see any harm in this committee. And if board members want to move forward with doing this important work, I could fully support it.
Okay, Ms. Brown.
Okay, so this committee first came up at my very first meeting in January. We are in March. This isn't a new discussion. I'm a little surprised that everybody's acting like it's been sprung upon us when it really has been discussed. The committee has an end date, April 1st, 2024. I really don't see any harm in evaluating from a different avenue And the ad hoc committee sitting right in front of us follows our bylaws. And we did discuss this in the policy review committee. And we discussed that it would fall under ad hoc. So I don't really see any reason to delay voting on it either, and I would support this. Thank you.
Ms. Franklin.
I didn't have my hand up, but I will go ahead.
Okay.
Since you have me in the queue. I quite frankly do support this committee. I think that we've had discussion on it. I would have one question, though. Are we going to be, one, voting on this tonight, and two, have you already selected the other additional school board member? Or are we having discussion on it?
When we finish speaking, then I'll follow up and tell you, okay? And answer these questions between Ms. Weems and I. Okay?
So-
we have a couple people left in the queue, and then we'll go on with the
So
answer
I just
the
want to clarify,
questions.
so when we put this up for a vote, we're just putting it up for a discussion vote, correct?
Right now, it's just discussion.
Point of order, Madam Chair. The rest of the board has no clue. It'd be much better if you told us exactly what this entailed.
As soon as, excuse me, I just said, as soon as we finish the queue, Ms. Anderson said her last, she had her hand up, and then we are going to speak and explain it, okay? We will answer your questions then. Ms. Anderson.
Thank you. So usually when we vote on an ad hoc committee, it's right, the chair chooses the chair of the committee, but we also usually know who the committee members are going to be when we vote on an ad hoc committee. So naming those members of the committee would be helpful also at this time, since we are voting on this ad hoc committee tonight. I'd just like to know who's going to serve on the committee, because that's usually the precedent that we've done in the past. We've always known who was going to be on the ad hoc and committee, and therefore we could vote on it at that time as well.
Thank you. All right, now we're going to clarify some things. And if you would like, what we can do is bring this vote back to the next meeting. Okay? Defer it tonight, but we're going to explain some more. Because we had spoken about it back in January, as Ms. Manning said, and it was brought before the Policy Review Committee, that 3 of our members are sitting here that were there, and I was too, Ms. Linetti as well. We discussed this. We discussed this, bringing this as one of the ad hoc committees, or a committee, and we decided in the policy that it fit the description of an ad hoc committee. This is something that Mrs. Weems had brought up back in January and asked about having this committee, because there are some city council members that have reached out to many of us, actually, about it. We do know we have a very robust CTE program. We do. And we have had a wonderful presentation that showed all the great things that we have. We do know that. But the city council had that same presentation, by the way, as you guys know. I watched it, several of us watched it when it was done. It was presented to them at a workshop. And it was very robust to them too. But they still would like to discuss it, have an ad hoc committee, just find out what's going on, maybe make some suggestions. So Ms. Linetti, Ms. Weems, and I met to get the parameters of this committee set. Just like you see on our committee page, it has a description of all the committees and what they're about. This is what we did, and this is what I read tonight. Now, there's some questions that people asked that they wanted answered tonight besides what I'm just saying. So I'm going to ask Mrs. Weems to speak next. She is going to share with you the agenda she came up with to have this very first meeting. This first meeting is not for the committee. It's to find out with Mrs. Wilson and a couple of she'll name the other people that are involved with this, with the city and the school board, not the school board, but the school division. Okay, and they're going to be meeting and talking about this. I'll let her explain it to you, and then we can go on from there. Okay, thank you. Sweet.
Yes, thank you. I'm a bit surprised too, but anyway, I brought this up the very first meeting in January. As Ms. Riggs said, it was because during the campaign, I heard this from everybody. VOTEC, Career in Tech, many of us did. Many city council people have contacted several of us saying, we've got to, get together and think what the city needs, decide what the schools need. So I asked for this committee to be added, and I think it was at the very 1st of January. Then, per the advice of Dr. Spence and Ms. Linetti, we put it, like Trinae said, through the policy to see if it was actually would be a standing committee, an ad hoc committee, a joint committee, wherever it would fit. And they agreed that it should be an ad hoc committee. So I envisioned that on our first get-together, when we decide kind of the purpose and the parameters, since it is a joint committee, we need to be hearing from the other side, the other joint members, which is City Council. We will be discussing, hopefully, a review of exactly what the Virginia Beach schools opportunities are already for our career and technical education students, the possibilities, and also some of the potential possibilities that we may be having in the near future. And Sarah Lockett will be, obviously a great person to help us with that. From the city side, as Ms. Martin mentioned, Taylor Adams, we need to hear from him about the workforce, economic development trends and needs of the city. And are we, and in this committee, after we see kind of like what we have already, what the needs of the city are, then I'm envisioning this ad hoc committee will say, are we meeting those needs both as a city and as an educational school system? Also, we need to decide then about, again, this is a joint committee. I can't sit here and just give you all the parameters because it's a joint committee with City Council. We'll discuss the parameters of it, who's going to be on it, how are we going to engage with the advisory council for the technical and career education, the time frame, when we're going to report back, what's our end game, what is exactly our purpose, and that's what we're going to discuss. Again, this has been discussed by many city council members. It's been discussed by the community. It's been discussed by us here on the board. My disappointment is we haven't already started this. I mean, I mentioned it in early January, and it's taken us this long, and now it's probably going to take us longer to decide if it's ad hoc, if it's what this or what that. We need to get started and then decide how we're going to move forward, but we can't do that until we start meeting. And so I would appreciate a vote on this, and so that we can start meeting and start moving forward. Thank you.
I just want to answer one of the questions that Ms. Anderson had, and that was about the advisory committee that we have. Ms. Lockett, Sarah Lockett is the one that is on that advisory committee, so she will be involved in this first meeting as well. So she will be there to advise and share her knowledge with that advisory committee that she has for the advisory committee, okay? So I feel very comfortable that she will be there. All right? Ms. Manning first, then Ms. Melnick, and then Ms. Owens.
Just one clarifying question, Madam Chair. This will come back to the school board for a vote for the appointment of the school board member and alternate to serve on the committee, correct? Right? That, according to this.
Repeat that, I was giving something to.
According to this resolution, it states one additional school board member and one alternate school board member will also be appointed by the school board to serve. So after their initial organizational meeting, this will come back to the school board for the appointments for a vote, correct?
That is what we had intended to do.
Okay.
Tonight was the motion to begin this committee, to have the committee, okay? Not the motion to set forth the members. It was just the motion that we were going to start the ad hoc committee.
Okay, thank you.
So sorry I didn't make that very clear, okay? Ms. Melnick.
Madam Chair, if this had been presented like that from the beginning, like 15 minutes ago, we probably wouldn't have wasted 15 minutes. I'm in favor of that, but that's not how this was presented. This was a little elusive. I'm not against this at all. I appreciate the work. Believe me, I appreciate the work. Again, I rely on the trade industry. This is very, very important to me. But thank you.
And let me apologize to all of you because it was the way I presented it that it was not clear. So I am very sorry that it was kind of sprung on you and you're like, my God, what happened? So it is my fault and I am sorry. I will try not to let this happen again.
Point of order. Again, Ms. Manning suggested that you will be appointing people and we will come back and vote on those people at the next meeting, but yet, at a later date then. So I still would like to know who you plan to appoint for this committee, because obviously there is a meeting already scheduled. Someone presumed that they were the chair already, that we'd already voted to do this. I just don't like the way this is presented tonight. It just doesn't look right. If this had been presented in a different way, or even if we had had this in writing before the meeting, it would be different, but this is just not right, the way to throw this at us like this and say, oh, we've been talking about this since January. Yes, I've been talking about it since January, but I've also been saying there's no need for this because of the fact that we have the advisory council of the career and technical education community. We already have that in place. So this is a duplication of that committee, and I'm not sure we need city council people telling us what we need. We know what we need, and they were presented with a very excellent presentation by Sarah Lockett a few weeks ago. They were told what we do, what we have, and I think this is just a bunch of smoke that's been put up, and it's political. It's political. We have politicians out there who said, oh, we don't have, what? We don't have a career and technical center? They didn't even know we had it. They didn't even know half the stuff we had. So the presentation that was given by Ms. Lockett a few weeks ago was supposed to address that. However, there were certain city council people who weren't even paying attention to that. So what is the purpose of this particular ad hoc committee? As I said, hey, if there's a need for it, I'm not against it, but I don't see why we have to have a duplication when we already have a career and technical education committee that, that can answer these things. Maybe we just need to add this particular set of questions to that committee, and that would be my suggestion to begin with. This is not right to bring this forward tonight, and I'll be voting against this only because of the way this is presented, thrown at us at the last minute without any information ahead of time. That's not how you do business on a school board.
Ms. Weems.
Yes, I take issue with insinuating that this is political. This is not political for me. It is an area that I have been talking about for 20 years. It is not a duplicate because it's a joint committee. The council is not a joint committee. I would advise you, if you don't think we need to look at expanding any career or VOTEC opportunities, if you don't think that we need to work with City Council and economic development, vote no. If you want that opportunity to work with City Council and with our staff here on school board and see what direction we want to go with VOTEC and career and technical education, and then listen to the report given, it may be do nothing, it may be revamp what we have, it may be add something to different buildings, I don't know. That's what the committee's gonna decide. If you want the committee to explore that, vote yes. If you don't think that we need to explore anything else, that we are doing it exactly 100% right, vote no and don't engage. But this is ridiculous. I've been talking about this for years. I brought it up the first meeting in January, and to insinuate that this is some political pawning or to get political points is absolutely wrong. I take issue with it. I don't like it. Stop it. Either vote yes or no.
Who was my second? Who was my second? Was it you, Ms. Franklin?
Ms.
Thank you.
Franklin.
Okay, we're gonna move on. Ms. Owens.
Yes, we've been talking about this since January. I agree. The issue is we've been talking about it since January, and all of that time, we couldn't get something in writing until sitting on the stage today. That's where I have issue with, not that we haven't been talking about it. I'm still unclear exactly what the ad hoc committee is going to do that doesn't happen in the Career and Technical Advisory Council. The city council members and a board member couldn't join in on that. I'm unclear, but that's fine, I guess. I would like to, I guess, make an alternate motion that if we're going to vote today, that we vote to include whoever the members, the rest of the members on this committee are going to be.
So actually, what I was
I
going to...
second that.
Hold on. Actually, what I was going to do before you make that motion is I was going to pull my motion and ask for my person that seconded to approve of that. And so we can bring it back at the next meeting with the people that will be on the committee. Do I have that agreement with my person? Okay. So,
Clarification, people as in the other school board member, because we can't decide who's going to be on a joint city council school board committee.
Correct.
So you're just saying what the other person and alternate will be, correct?
right.
I agree to that.
Yeah.
Point of order.
And this,
I have a point of order regarding what's on the floor right now, because it was my understanding in Robert's rules, once a motion's on the floor and seconded, you can't just withdraw it. Can you do that, Ms. Linetti?
If you have your second,
Wait, let me clarify. Are you voting that Mrs. Owens and Mrs. Anderson's motion, because Ms. Anderson made a quick second on Mrs. Owens' motion, but Mrs. Riggs was talking at the time it happened. So the question is, we just need to decide, but is Ms. Owens' motion on the floor, or did Ms. Riggs, by starting to talk, was amending her motion? But she would need leave. If Mrs. Riggs' motion is one on the floor, she needs leave from the whole body to make that amendment at this point. So you just need to figure out which one of your motions is actually on the floor at the moment.
I will withdraw my motion with the knowledge of.
And I agree.
okay.
So my point is, can she withdraw her motion?
You haven't voted on it at this point. With the leave of the board, she could do that. But I think you need to state it very clearly what you were saying. I think you were looking at Mrs. Franklin when you're stating it and see if the board agrees to you change it since you've already opened up discussion.
Okay, this is the motion that I made about the purpose of the Ad hoc Workforce Committee, Development Committee. I'm going to withdraw that motion for tonight if I have the agreement of Mrs. Franklin, who seconded that motion. You want to speak into the mic?
You have my agreement.
Point of order, Madam Chair.
Okay. Point of order.
I do believe since debate has started, that requires leave of the entire board.
Yes.
In other words, we have to vote on it.
So it sounds to me like Mrs. Riggs and Mrs. Franklin are agreeing to the same motion at this point. So does everyone understand what you're being asked at this point? Or do you need to restate it so that you all are voting on what they would like the motion now to read?
Okay,
Please restate it.
then my motion right now is to withdraw the Ad hoc Workforce Development Committee motion to begin. Okay? That is my motion, to withdraw that vote for tonight and to bring it back at the next meeting. Is that understood? Is that clear? No?
So,
Is it clear?
May I ask, are you just asking to table this motion until the next meeting, our next regularly scheduled meeting?
Well, I don't know if we need to table it because at that next meeting, I'm going to bring forth the recommended members as well.
Tabling it just means.
Here's my problem with tabling. Tabling means it does need to come back at the next meeting or it's lost. If there's any chance you're not ready and you want to push it another week, you lose it. So withdrawal might be better. She's just withdrawing the motion at this time. She's telling you her intention is to bring it back the next meeting. It might be better off that way. If there's any reason you're not ready by the 28th, knowing that you have a meeting the following week on the 5th, I just want to give you the option. Tabling limits your options.
Right. So I'm withdrawing it. So that gives us the opportunity to bring it back at a later date, whether it be the next meeting or a meeting after that. Is that good?
So a good question on the floor is, now the board needs to agree. Do you agree to withdraw, or do you want to go forward with the motion and vote on it? Do you all want to?
Now, do I have a motion to vote on my withdrawal?
Well, you're agreeing that you're agreeing to change the motion. The motion on the floor is to agree to change the motion to withdraw it from the board's consideration for tonight.
Okay. So I've made the
So you
motion.
would
Do I have
take
a
it-
second?
I think Mr. Cole.
Jennifer's your second.
Jennifer, you going to second that one?
Yes.
Jennifer, Ms. Franklin seconded.
So the only vote, the next vote is, do you agree that to change the motion to withdrawing it for the night?
Right.
Because then you're going to have to vote again to withdraw it in this point, or if you just take it off. Just go ahead and vote on with the motion to change the motion to change the vote to a withdrawal of the motion.
Okay. So Mrs. Linetti just stated it. So all that agree to that, please raise your hand.
We have 9 ayes.
All that disagree, raise your hand.
And we have 2 nays, so the motion to withdraw has passed.
Okay. Now, do we need another motion?
Very technically you do, because all you did was change, that vote just changed the motion. So now you're actually, do you vote to withdraw the motion?
Okay.
No, what you actually did was agree to change the motion from what it was originally to withdraw.
Okay, so now I make a motion to withdraw the entire move that the school board appoint the following ad hoc committee in accordance with bylaw 128. Do I have a second? Ms. Franklin seconds it. Okay. Any more discussion? Okay, all that are in favor of withdrawing it, please raise your hand.
I wanted to talk. Yeah, it's okay.
She does get discussion before you vote.
She raised her hand and I missed it. Go ahead, Ms. Brown, I'm sorry.
Okay, so I am going to be a no vote on this because our ad hoc bylaws state who gets to be the chair, and it would be irresponsible to pick who is going to be on the committee when the committee isn't completely set up yet. It would be irresponsible to volunteer yourself. There's a few people in here that are saying they're going to vote no on this that initially said that they wanted to be on the committee. And so I think it's important that we collaborate with City Council. You know, this is the city of Virginia Beach, and this is our city schools, and You know, our budget is cooked into their budget, and it's important that we utilize the resources of our city to benefit the students in our city. And when we have that opportunity, I think that we should do that. So I don't think that it's really appropriate to move this and withdraw it because there is no table date. And since it's already been January to March, there's no proof that this will ever even come back to us. So I'm a no. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. Ms. Melnick.
So while I initially was not happy with the way this was presented, I am asking my colleagues to allow this to go forward. There is a brief organizational meeting on Monday, as I've been talking to Mrs. Weems, with Taylor Adams, Dr. Sarah Lockett, Mrs. Weems, Mrs. Wilson. Allow them to go forward, just a basic meeting to come back and she can come back and report to us. She can tell us exactly what happened. We can go from there. An additional person and an alternate can be chosen after that. But I mean, the committee only has an expiration date of next year. So I'd like to see this just at least move forward for this initial meeting for Monday. And we had the opportunity to get out of here at a decent time, and now I think we blew it. So that's it, Madam Chair.
Okay, and I just want to add, I've already put in place the person that made this problem, me again, sorry, because of the way it was presented. And I guess assuming we had talked about it in January, we all knew this was going to be coming about. So I was not thinking that this was being sprung on you. So I'm really sorry that people took it that way tonight. It was not meant to be that way at all. And what Ms. Melnick just said, what Ms. Weems just said, this was just to begin to find out what we were going to be talking about. So I can't see anything. I liked what Ms. Brown said. It's true. I mean, yes, we have a robust program. We all know it. But there's no reason why we can't listen to what the city council members say that might help our workforce. I know it's a buzzword, but it's a buzzword that's happening because it's true. We need skilled workers. So if there's a way that they can help us, there's no reason why we don't work together to do that, okay? So I just needed to say that again. I am sorry, Ms. Manning.
Yeah, I'd like to make a substitute motion that we adopt the Ad Hoc Workforce Development Committee with Ms. Weems as chair as presented to us in the document in front of us.
Do I have a second? Ms. Melnick, second. Before we take a vote, I have to have a discussion. So, and Ms. Martin is the first one in the...
I simply want to know how we can apply to be on this committee. That has not yet been answered.
I asked at the beginning of the year in January, because that was on it as a possible committee, and people put their name in already. So I know that you were one of them. I have like about 5 people. So what we'll do is I will send it out again. There hasn't been a protocol of how you decide or requirements. I mean, you look at length that people have been on, their experience, that kind of thing. Those are the things that it's in our bylaws about how they're chosen in the committee bylaws 128. So we'll be looking at that. I'm not sure. I've got ideas in my head, and I will not proceed with those ideas until I share them with the whole board.
So we can resubmit our interest and
Yes.
qualifications.
Yes,
Okay.
please resubmit it, your interest in it, okay? Because we know, what we did add, we were talking about it was just only going to be 2 members. And Ms. Weems had asked about being the chair back then when she presented it.
Okay, and
And so they were the 2, but now we have an alternate, so there'll be 3.
The other thing I'd like to point out is this committee does not have an end date, and it has a deliverable date of April 1st. And the bylaws say that a chairman would be proposed, but this motion has that the chair will be, not proposed to be. That's my only issue with that. Otherwise, all is good.
Okay. We're still discussion, right? Ms. Anderson, still discussion before our substitute motion? Ms.
Yeah.
Anderson?
Please.
Oh, Mr.
Anderson
So,
first.
as I stated earlier, I'm not 100% against this committee. I don't like the backroom conversations that have been happening leading up to this. The fact that this was brought forward tonight because there's already a meeting planned on Monday shows that there have been many backroom conversations leading up to this. I don't like the fact that we're expected to approve this, and we don't know who's going to be on the committee yet. All of those things should be happening. We've never approved an ad hoc committee before since I've been on the board, and not known who the chair is appointing to be on that committee. Those are all the things that I'm asking to happen tonight before we vote on this. And that's why we had the discussion earlier. Now, you know, I just feel like this has been handled the wrong way. And then Ms. Weems said earlier, what is the goal? Why is she having a meeting on Monday? She said it was to have a discussion about the purpose and the parameters, a review of what we already do. She said potential possibilities, that Taylor Adams would talk about the needs of the city. Are we meeting those needs of the city? And as I pointed out, all of those things were pretty much answered when Ms. Lockett gave a presentation a couple of weeks ago. Several city council members have approached me and said they weren't even aware that we had many of those offerings that were brought out when Sarah Lockett gave that presentation. And so they were very pleased with what we're already offering. I just feel like I've said it before and I'll repeat it again, this is not something that we have to do right now because we already have an advisory council on career and technical education. And we are already doing so many things that a lot of people weren't even aware of. So the only thing I can see of right now is that we really need to get the word out to our community of what we actually do offer to make sure that our students are aware that they have these opportunities. Anyway, I don't like the way this was brought up. I just felt like it was done the wrong way, and I hope this won't happen in the future.
Thank you. Mr. Culpepper.
I appreciate that the point Ms. Weems made earlier that an advisory council, Citizens Advisory Council is not the same thing. It was an ad hoc committee directly between the school board and the city council. And any process fouls aside, I think we all understand what's going on here now. I think we all agree that this is something we need to do, and I definitely think it's best we continue to move forward. And I think simply by weight of effort alone, Ms. Weems has obviously shown herself to be a good selection for chair, and I have no objection to that. We'll have a chance between now and the next meeting to pitch our desires to be on this board and have a little bit of discussion on it outside of right now, even though we've already blown the opportunity to get out of here by 8. So I have no objection with dealing with that at the next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more discussion? Ms. Owens.
I would just ask for Ms. Weems, when you have the meeting, and I will move forward with supporting it, that you are able to come back and say, after talking with them, what it is that our advisory committee is not currently providing, so that there's an understanding of why there would be a need to move forward and it can't be combined in there. And then we can make an informed decision from that point after.
Madam Chair, I just ask that Ms. Manning amend her substitute motion to reflect the proposed chair, to put that language in, proposed chair.
But then who's your chair? Because then you're voting on a proposed, and you need to have somebody.
Our bylaws
let me
require.
Let me add this.
Our bylaws require that the ad hoc committee is recommended by the chair and then the board votes on it.
And let me be, we're still discussing, okay? So let me recommend this. I am going to, there is only one person going to that meeting, and that's Ms. Weems. I am going as ex officio as well. I mentioned that to her when we were discussing this. So I am going to also be there. There'll be 2 of us there. I won't be speaking because I'm not a part of the committee, but I am the chair of the board, so I will go as well. And I obviously was going to ask her to report to us, and she had planned to do that. We discussed that in our meeting when we were forming this committee. So when we come back to the next meeting, she will be discussing this. I don't know if it'll be in a workshop, Dr. Spencer, Ms. Linetti, if it needs to be in that form or if it needs to be on the dais.
My suggestion is you get something writing to the board before then, so they have some idea what's going to happen and when it's going to happen.
Yeah, we will definitely have some notes before then, too. And I am going to ask right now, send your interest about being on that committee, okay? All right, so let's get to the vote. Okay. So we have a motion on the table by Ms. Manning to bring back this ad hoc committee development workforce development committee.
To approve it.
To approve it tonight. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Ms. Melnick seconded, I'm sorry. Okay, all in favor, please raise your hand.
Madam Chair, we have 10 ayes.
All against, please raise your hand.
And we have 1 nay, so the substitute motion by Ms. Manning did pass 10-1.
Thank you. Somewhere I have my stuff.
Yeah, but in fairness, it wasn't.
All right, so our committee, organization, or board reports. Do any school board members have anything to report? As a reminder, this is time for short reports, and school board members may fill full reports with the clerk to be distributed to other school board members. Ms. Brown, Ms. Franklin, and Ms. Anderson.
Okay, I just wanted to do a quick plug. The Green Run NJROTC won first place in the Area 5 competition. The NJROTC will now go on to compete at nationals in Pensacola, Florida on March 31st and April 1st. These students are dedicated and go to school daily between 5 a.m. and 5:30 to practice and remain after school to practice again. I'm really proud of their accomplishments, and I want to wish them luck at nationals.
If you don't, I will.
And also, they are looking for donations for the trip that can be dropped off at Green Run High School. Thank you.
And I'm just going to plug that as a very worthy cause, and they work really hard to get to nationals. And I just wanted to announce that Gifted CAC did have a meeting last Monday night, and the members are just continuing sharing their site reports as they're visiting different schools and their observations in those schools. The next meeting is April 3rd from 6:30 to 8 p.m. if you want to attend. Thank you.
Ms. Anderson?
So at your seats this evening, when you arrived, there was a flyer like this announcing that, and I mentioned it in the past, but the 2023 Sister Cities Association of Virginia Beach will be choosing their ambassador on March 24th. And the contest also has an art contest going along with it as well. And all of these are our students who are competing for not only the ambassador, but also the art competition also has our Virginia Beach students. So we would love it if some of you could show up on March 24th at the Philippine Cultural Center. And the information to get tickets is on the flyer. So hopefully some of you will be able to attend and see some of our bright students who are competing to be the ambassador to represent our city, and also to see some of the art contest applicants. So the other thing that I wanted to bring out is that there is also on March 25th, which is the next day, at Red Wing Park, there will be a celebration celebrating Miyazaki, Japan, which is another one of our sister cities. So that will be going on, I think, starting at 11, and we'll go from 11 till 3 that day at Red Wing Park. And also, another celebration that we usually do is on March 26th. Everything is that weekend, by the way, seems like, at the Norwegian Lady at the beach. At 1 o'clock, there will be a commemoration of the Norwegian Lady. And Moss, Norway has another Norwegian Lady which faces west, and our Norwegian Lady faces east. So they supposedly face each other across the big pond. So the commemoration commemorates the reason why the Norwegian Lady was put up there to begin with. And if you need more information about that, there will be information provided on there that day as well. But that ceremony is at 1 o'clock. I believe it's on 24th Street at the beach.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson, Ms. Brown, and Ms. Franklin. Ms. Weems.
Yes, I attended the Mental Health Task Force yesterday, and just kind of, it's divided into 4 subcommittees, and my committee is about our employees. And so I just wanted to reiterate that the Be Well program through our, it's through the benefits office, but the Be Well, the Employee Assistant Program, Life's a Beach podcast, SNAPCOM, and Care Solace is all available to all our employees. So, so check it out. There's some great videos on there about mental health, some great strategies and all that for all of our staff and family. Be well. Also with the mental health and what Mr. Jameson quoted some statistics about substance use disorder. As you know, a couple years ago, the governor signed a bill mandating opioid-focused education curriculum in our health and PE curriculum, and Nicole DeFries and our whole department worked so hard on that. In fact, we have sent our curriculum all over the country because it has opioid-focused pieces in the health curriculum. And so to go along with that, we have a speaking panel of community members, and Shannon Doyle, who lost her daughter last year, is on that and is doing just a great job. But as of 2 weeks from now, we will have have made 31 presentations in our middle school and high schools about opioids and substance use disorder, and we're getting great feedback from the principals and a lot of great conversation from our students. Thank you.
Okay, so we are going to go into closed session. And I ask the Vice Chair Weems to read into closed session.
I move that the school board recess into closed session in accordance with the exceptions to open meetings law set forth in Code of Virginia 2.2-3711, Part A, paragraph 1278, as amended, to deliberate on the following matters. 1, discussion, consideration, or interviews of prospective candidates for employment, assignment, appointment, promotion, performance, demotion, salaries, disciplining, or resignation of specific public officers, appointees, or employees of any public body, an evaluation or performance of departments or schools of public institutions of higher education where such evaluation will necessarily involve discussion of the performance of specific individuals. 2, Discussion or consideration of admission or disciplinary matters or any other matters that would involve the disclosure of information contained in a scholastic record containing any student of any public institution of higher education in the Commonwealth or any state school system. However, any such student, legal counsel, and if the student is a minor, the student's parents or legal guardians shall be permitted to be present during the taking of testimony or presentation of evidence at a closed meeting if such student, parents, or guardians so request in writing and such request is submitted to the presiding officer of the appropriate board. 7, consultation with legal counsel and briefings by staff members or consultants pertaining to actual or probable litigation where such consultation or briefing in open meetings would adversely affect the negotiating or litigating posture of the public body. For the purposes of this subdivision, probable litigation means litigation that has been specifically threatened or on which the public body or its legal counsel has a reasonable basis to believe will be commenced by or against a known party. Nothing in this subdivision shall be construed to permit the closure of a meeting merely because an attorney representing the public body is in attendance or is consultant on a matter. 8, consultation with legal counsel employed or retained by a public body regarding specific legal matters requiring the provision of legal advice by such counsel. Nothing in this subdivision shall be construed to permit the closure of a meeting merely because an attorney representing the public body is in attendance or is a consultant on a matter, namely to discuss A, employee request for a reimbursement of legal fees, B, pending student matters, C, consultation with legal counsel regarding participation in a procurement matter, probable litigation, and pending litigation matters.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Ms. Franklin? All in favor to go into closed session? Please raise your hand.
Okay, Madam Chair, we have 10 ayes.
Okay, we will move to the Einstein Lab.
Beach has convened a closed meeting on this date pursuant to an affirmative recorded vote in accordance with the provisions of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, and whereas Section 2.2-3712D of the Code of Virginia requires a certification by this school board that such closed meeting was conducted in conformity with Virginia law, now therefore be it resolved that the school board of the City of Virginia Beach hereby certifies that to the best of each member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements by Virginia law were discussed in the closed meeting to which this certification applies, and only such public business matters as were identified in the motion by which the closed meeting was convened were heard, discussed, or considered.
Okay, a motion has been made and seconded to transition in out of closed session.
You guys, I'm not sick. I just have allergies. Oh. But I understand.
I feel for you too. I'm fine. My whole family had COVID at Christmas.
Okay, so Madam Chair, Madam Chair, just point of question. We have Ms. Weems made the motion and Ms. Melnick seconded. We need a vote.
Now, all in favor to move out of closed session?
Approve.
Raise your hand.
Certified closed.
Okay, Madam Chair, we have 11 ayes. The motion passed.
Okay, so we're out of closed session. Now we need to take a vote on the payment of the legal fees of the employee, the bus driver, the employee. So, I need a motion and a second.
I move.
Second. Okay. Motion moved by Mrs. Melnick, seconded by Mrs. Weems, to pay for the legal fees for the bus driver that was exonerated, is that the right word? From the charges. Any discussion?
Just ask Kimmy, do we need to read the resolution?
No. Where is it? Oh, I don't have it.
It was in our email.
Okay. All right. This is the resolution regarding payment of employee legal fees. Whereas that on April 1st, 2022, a VBCPS school bus driver was charged with assault and battery of a minor student. And whereas that the charge against the bus driver was dismissed by the Virginia Beach General District Court on July 26, 2022, and the charge was later expunged from the bus driver's criminal record by the Circuit Court October 24th, 2022. And whereas that the bus driver and her attorney are seeking payment of legal fees in accordance with Policy 2-59 in the amount of $1,514 in legal fees and costs incurred in defending this charge and having her criminal record expunged. And whereas that School Board Policy 2-59 allows the school board to pay an employee's legal fees incurred as a result of a lawsuit filed against the employee in their official capacity, and provided that the lawsuit is later dismissed against the employee. Now therefore be it resolved that the school board authorizes payment of the employee's legal fees and costs in the amount of $1,514. Further resolved that the clerk is directed to send a copy of this resolution to the teacher, the teacher's attorney, school board attorney, the chief financial officer, the director of business services, and the chief human resource officer, who is directed to place a copy of this resolution in the employee's personal file. That should say to the bus driver, not teacher. That the clerk, let me further resolve, that the clerk is directed to send a copy of this resolution to the bus driver, the bus driver's attorney, school board attorney, the chief financial officer, the director of business services, and the chief human resources officer, who is directed to place a copy of this resolution in the employee's personal file, adopted by the school board of the city of Virginia Beach, Virginia, this 14th day of March, 2023. That was the move. Do I have a second? All in favor, raise your hand.
Okay, Madam Chair, we have 11 ayes. The motion passed.
Thank you. This meeting is adjourned.